Thank you, Alex, and thank you for this opportunity for me to present what we as a program are doing in Moldova. The topic of my presentation is going to be kind of like a mixture of a philosophical approach, why we do what we do, with a few practical applications. But before I dive into my presentation, I would like to actually do something else. My father is a pretty decent public speaker. And he taught me that if you want the audience to be fully engaged with you, you got to start with a joke so that, you know, kind of like you release the tension a bit. The problem is that I'm not good at doing that. And mainly because I just can't remember jokes. And I oftentimes cannot deliver the punchline pretty well. But I am going to venture, I am going to try to do that today. And actually, as I was preparing for this presentation, I asked ChatGPT to write me a few really good jokes about payments. And I'm not sure if you've tried to do that. ChatGPT is awful at writing jokes. But it actually provided a few interesting ones, and I'm going to try to share with you the one I like the most. So, cash, card, and an instant payment walk into a bar. Okay, I like it. You know, cash fumbles around counting change. The card is tapping, but the confirmation is not coming through. Meanwhile, Mia paid for everyone, finished a drink, and it's halfway out the door. Ba-ding-ksh. Okay. All right. I think that's halfway good of a job, so I think I have space to grow going forward. So, the USAID MISRA program has been actively involved with supporting the National Bank in launching the instant payment system. And before I even dive into my presentation, I do want to say that we strongly appreciate the leadership that the National Bank has shown throughout the entire implementation of this project. And this is a perfect example of how a government authority can actually lead and promote change, given the numbers that we have already seen. But why we as a program were really interested in supporting instant payments? Well, first, we consider that instant payments are an irreversible trend globally. More and more countries are implementing instant payment systems, and according to some estimates, between now and 2032, instant payment volumes globally are going to grow by about 300%, and I think that's still an underestimation. But besides the fact that this is an irreversible trend, we also see that instant payments in Moldova is aligning well with the USAID MISRA objectives, and I'm going to try to speak about 3 of these objectives. First and foremost, we want to see an increase in financial inclusion. You know, payments in general are our gateway into the financial world these days. And according to a study that we have done recently, and you've probably, if you heard me talk, you heard about these numbers, about 68% of Moldovans have a payment card or a bank card, but only 46% of Moldovans actually utilize this card to make payments daily. And I'm certain that if I asked you what do you think these numbers were, given the fact that we live in a city, in our bubble, our estimation would have been higher. But it's important to highlight that more than half of the population of Moldova is still not utilizing non-cash payments on a daily basis. So that's objective number 1. Second objective is driving adoption of digital payments and digital apps in general. According to the same study, we noticed that only 25% of Moldovans are using mobile banking apps. So there's a pretty wide gap and a pretty good opportunity there to continue driving adoption of everything digital. And with the instant payment system, of course, you have to have this mobile app, and we consider that this is going to drive digital adoption. And the third objective, which is critical in our view, because the entire financial system globally is underpinned by trust. If there's no trust, the modern financial system would collapse. According to the same study that we have done, and this is probably some important data for banks and financial service providers, only 35% of Moldovans trust that their financial institution treats them fairly. Only 35% of Moldovans. We believe that with initiatives such as MIA, which are very transparent, communicate in a very clear and concise manner, this is going to be a premise for raising the trust in financial institutions. But nevertheless, there's still a lot of work that financial institutions themselves need to do in order to increase these trust levels. The National Bank previously discussed about the big success of MIA, and they presented a few numbers. And congratulations to the 310,000 users. We do anticipate of reaching about 500,000 users within the first year of operation. And given the coming online of payments to business, this is certainly going to be achievable. I want to highlight two additional data that we identified according to our preliminary analysis. So, based on some preliminary data, we concluded that every Moldovan, on average, on every MIA transaction, and I'm here speaking about P2P because there's still not sufficient data about consumer to business payments, is saving about 85 US dollar cents or 15 lei per transaction. This saving is coming from two different sources. On the one hand, of course, it's savings because this is replacing peer-to-peer payments, which previously, if they were done outside of the same financial institution, had a cost. But at the same time, a lot of the saving is coming from the fact that MIA is replacing cash. And against conventional wisdom in Moldova, cash is not free. This is something that we consider, well, I have cash in my pocket, and carrying that cash has no cost. But in fact, carrying cash has a pretty large cost. And just consider the entire architecture and infrastructure that needs to be put in place for you to be able to have cash, withdraw cash from an ATM. Consider the risks of carrying cash. You might have counterfeit banknotes. You might have those banknotes stolen from you. And also consider the opportunity cost for carrying cash. Cash in your pocket is not cash deposited in an account that can actually generate interest for you. So, anyways, 85 US dollar cents saved on every transaction, on every peer-to-peer transaction. And the second really important data that I want to share with you is that 63% of transactions conducted through MIA are replacing cash transactions. So this is the kind of like the selling proposition for financial institutions, because of course financial institutions have to invest a lot of resources themselves to be able to be connected to the MIA instant payment system. But in the end, their gain comes from the fact that they have access to 63% of these transactions, which they didn't before. So money lending into financial institutions' accounts. And this is kind of like the theory of change. In our view, MIA is first and foremost an alternative to cash. It's not necessarily a competitor to other digital payment methods, but it's a competitor to cash. And if we want to build a modern digital society, this is where we need to kind of concentrate our efforts. So this concludes the more theoretical part of my presentation. In the next few minutes, I would just like to share a few of the hands-on results that we anticipate through our grants program. Ali mentioned that we launched a pretty large grants program trying to support payments from consumers to businesses. And we're working with 3 companies that all of you know really well. 2 of them are payment service providers, and one of them is a fintech company involved in various initiatives, including an e-invoicing service. So I won't be speaking about kind of like the companies themselves, because again, you know these companies, but I want to highlight where we are, where we have a partnership with these companies, and what is, again, our rationale in doing these activities and what you can expect as results coming up. So the first company that we're working with, and I'm not speaking about these companies in any particular order, we like them all. The first one is RunPay, and the reason why we're working with RunPay mainly is because they have a very large network nationally. They serve around 830 locations through their payment agents network, covering 95% of the population. And according to the to the survey that I mentioned at the very beginning, as you can probably imagine, there is a pretty big gap between everything rural and everything urban in Moldova. And again, probably a counterintuitive statistic, but more than half of Moldova is still rural. Even though most of the economic activity is concentrated around Chisinau, more than half of Moldova is rural. So again, if we want to have success with any of the objectives and indicators that I mentioned at the very beginning, we cannot ignore the rural population. So if I recall correctly from the survey, around 55% of the urban population is conducting non-cash payments on a regular basis, and only 37% of the rural population is doing non-cash payments. And of course, the reasons for that are multiple. It's not only, you know, a gap in knowledge between the city and the village. It's also, you know, the infrastructure of ATMs, where can you pay with non-cash payment methods. So this is specifically one of the reasons why we're working with RunPay. So RunPay is going to start providing payments through MIA over the entire country, offering affordable instant payment solutions both for businesses as acquirers and for citizens of Moldova. And every activity with our grantee has these two sides, because in payments you always have two sides of the coin. You have the payer and the payee. So there has to be something, some benefits for both of them. So RunPay is going to be working with the entire network of agents to try to educate the network itself, so that they in turn can educate the population how to purchase things with just a scan of a QR code and all the other possibilities. The second company that we're working with is Q Systems, and with Q Systems we are mainly going to be focused on bill payments. This is one of the core businesses of Q Systems, and if you've heard their previous presentations, in 2023 Q Systems facilitated payment of bills in the amount of 17 billion lei, $1 billion. So this is another huge market, and we are really excited to actually bring part of this market into the instant payment system, so that probably the data that the National Bank is going to be presenting in the future conferences is going to go through the roof if things go as planned. So a few ideas that Q Systems is working on is, one, Q Systems wants to consolidate multiple utility payments into one single bill that can be paid through instant payment system, making your life extremely easy. Rather than having to pay for various bills, you're going to do it once for your entire apartment or house. It can also, it intends to simplify payments with request to pay, specifically for small utility bill providers that don't have, you know, billing and invoicing infrastructure. And last but not least, it will be eliminating a lot of paper from the billing and payment process. So that's Q Systems. And the third company that we're working with is PayNet. And if you know PayNet, you certainly know that they are heavily focused on everything online. The main idea for the consumer, or the main benefit for the consumer, is that once you go on an e-commerce store that has a relationship with PayNet, at checkout, besides all the other payment options, you're going to be able to scan with a QR code, or you'll be able to generate a request to pay through a deep link or a request to pay notification on your phone. We anticipate that over 500 businesses will be equipped to receive online payments with MIA. And also an important part is going to be focusing on the businesses themselves. A business cabinet that will be allowing merchants to issue all these QR codes pretty easily. And the last thing that we are working on is payments for government. And Moldova is doing pretty well with payments for governments through MPay. And the entire, let's say, evolution of MPay has been a pretty successful story for Moldova. But we consider that a step further can be taken with if we connect MIA with MPay, and we have already done so. USAID MISRA has facilitated the technical connection between MPay and MIA, so technically the connection is there. There are a few regulatory and bureaucratic things that we're still working through to make this a possibility, but I'm just going to try to give you an example of what to expect once these payments also come online. So again, the first and the basic option is going to be on the MPay page, where when you get to a checkout, besides the traditional payment options available through MPay, you're going to be able to generate a QR code and just scan the MPay reference number by scanning, pay the MPay reference number by scanning the QR code and making the payment through MIA. But also the real added value is probably in more sophisticated services for the government, when it comes to the government collecting money from citizens. And just think about two hypothetical scenarios. You go to the Public Services Agency, you order a passport and some other documents, you have to make a payment. You don't have to go and queue in a line at a bank to make the payment, or you don't even have to open your mobile banking application and introduce the MPay reference number manually. The person on the other side of the desk at the Public Services Agency issues you a request to pay. A notification comes into your mobile app, you accept it, payment is done. You don't have to worry about anything else other than getting your documents. So this is one use case. Another use case is probably relevant for other government entities, such as, for example, local municipalities, which collect taxes on real estate. So the local municipality can actually, besides sending you, the paperwork in mail stating how much taxes you have to pay on it. And by the way, I always lose that paper, and I constantly forget that I need to pay 1 or 2 or 300 lei on my real estate taxes. So that government authority will be able to issue again a request to pay into your mobile banking app with a predetermined lifespan, which expires on the deadline for you to pay for the real estate taxes, and you just accept the payment. The payment is being made. This is going to significantly increase the rate of citizens paying for taxes on time. So this is going to be something that will be able to provide extremely useful cases for the government. So in a nutshell, this is what we're doing, and this is what we anticipate kind of to happen over the next year or so. With this instant payment, Moldova can truly shine not only in the life of its citizens, but also on the global stage. So thank you for your attention, and thank you so much for the possibility to share.